The stars outside the broken window of the small human ship were quiet, but inside, chaos ruled. The battle with the Tharzal had gone badly. Fire and smoke filled the air. Screams and shouts came from every corner. Soldiers ran, trying to save the ship or help their injured friends. It was a losing fight. Daniel Cole, a young human soldier with short brown hair and tired eyes, stood near the command deck. His face was covered in sweat and dust. He held a plasma rifle in his hands, his fingers tight around it. He was breathing hard. Most of the crew had either escaped or been killed. Only a few stayed behind to cover the retreat. Daniel was one of them. "Go, get to the escape pods," shouted Commander Lisa Grant, the leader of the ship. She had been injured, her arm wrapped in a torn piece of uniform. "I'm staying," Daniel said. "Someone needs to hold them off." Lisa looked at him, her eyes full of fear and respect. She nodded once. "Thank you." She turned and limped toward the last pod, helping another crew member who could barely walk. Daniel turned back, toward the hallway. He could hear the loud, heavy steps of the Tharzal soldiers. They were coming. The Tharzal were tall, strong, aliens with thick armor and cold, sharp eyes. Their voices were deep, and their language sounded like growls and clicks. Daniel knew he had no chance against a full squad, but he had to buy time. He took cover behind a metal crate and aimed his rifle. When the first alien stepped into view, he fired. The alien dropped, its armor sparking. More came. Daniel kept firing until his weapon overheated. He grabbed a grenade and threw it, covering his ears from the blast. The ship shook. Metal screamed. Daniel was thrown against the wall. His head hit hard, and the world turned black dot. When Daniel woke up, everything was quiet. He was lying on cold metal. His hands were tied behind his back. His legs were chained. He tried to move, but the chains were tight. He looked around. He was in a large room with glowing lights and strange machines. It smelled like oil and something rotten. He wasn't on the human ship anymore. He was on a Tharzal warship. A group of Tharzal soldiers stood nearby. One of them walked toward him. This one wore a black chest plate with a silver mark. He was a captain. The alien looked down at Daniel and made a sound like laughter. "Is this the brave human who dared to fight us alone?" he said in broken English. "You are small, weak." The others laughed too. One of them pointed at Daniel's bruised face. Another made fun of his clothes. They treated him like a joke. Daniel said nothing. He kept his eyes on the captain. "What is your name, human?" the captain asked. "Daniel Cole," he said quietly. "Daniel Cole," the alien repeated, almost with a sneer. "You will be our trophy, a gift to our general. You will make the others laugh." They dragged Daniel down long, dark hallways. The ship was massive. The walls were black metal with glowing lines. Strange symbols moved on the screens. Every alien they passed looked at Daniel and laughed. They threw him into a small cell with hard walls and no window. The door closed with a hiss. The lights dimmed. Daniel sat up slowly, his back against the wall. His head hurt, his body ached, but his mind was clear. He remembered the fight. He remembered his choice to stay behind. He didn't regret it. He looked around the cell. It was empty, but he noticed a small panel on the wall. The screws were old and slightly rusted. He smiled to himself. Time passed. Slowly, each day, the aliens came to laugh at him. They spoke in their own language, but Daniel understood their tone. They thought he was weak, a soft human, no threat. They brought him food, something cold and gray. He ate it without complaint. He needed strength. One day, a younger alien guard came to bring food. He was alone. He looked at Daniel and asked, "Why did you not run when your ship fell?" Daniel looked up. "Because someone had to stay." The young guard was quiet. Then he left. Daniel started to talk to the young guard each day. He learned a little more about the ship, where the guards changed shifts. When the lights dimmed, what parts of the ship were most secure. He listened carefully. He watched everything. The aliens thought Daniel was broken. They thought he had given up, but Daniel was planning. One night, after the lights dimmed, he moved to the panel in his cell. He had hidden a small piece of metal under his sleeve. It was sharp part of a food tray. He had been shaping it slowly every day. He worked at the screws, turning them little by little. It was slow, careful work. He made no noise. Behind the panel, he found wires. He smiled again. He didn't know everything about alien tech, but he knew enough. He had studied engineering. He had trained in survival and hacking. He had paid attention. He didn't have much, but he had time. And he had a goal. Daniel knew he couldn't win by strength, but he didn't need to. He just needed to be smart, to be quiet, to wait. And one day, he would make them regret every laugh. He looked up at the small camera in the corner of the cell. He gave it a small, knowing smile. The game had begun. He wasn't just a prisoner. He was the first step in a plan the Tharzal would never see coming. The stars outside the warship didn't move, but inside, in one dark cell, a human soldier waited and planned his next move. Daniel sat in his cell, staring at the wires behind the panel. He had pulled them out slowly, piece by piece, without alerting the guards. He knew some were power lines, and others were for communication. He didn't want to break anything too. Soon he needed to learn more first. Each day, the young alien guard brought him food. His name was Reeler. He was smaller than the others, and he asked questions. Do humans always fight when they know they will lose? Reeler asked. Not all, Daniel said, but some of us do. Reeler seemed curious. He didn't laugh like the others. Sometimes he looked confused. Other times he looked thoughtful. Daniel used this to his advantage. He asked Reeler questions too. Where does this ship go? He asked one day. We are heading to the Central Fleet, Reeler replied. For the victory meeting, your capture is a gift for our general. Daniel nodded. Will many ships be there? Yes, dozens. All the high leaders. That night, Daniel thought hard. If the fleet was gathering, there would be more targets. Bigger chances. He spent more time working on the wires. He found one that gave a small spark. He used a metal piece from his food tray to press the wire to another. The lights in his cell blinked. Then they returned. He smiled. He was learning. Later, that week, Reeler came with food again. Daniel looked at him and said, You don't belong with them. What do you mean? Reeler asked. Do you think you ask questions? That scares them. Reeler stayed silent for a moment. Then he said, They say humans are clever but weak. Sometimes being clever is enough. Daniel said, The next day. Daniel tried something new. He used the wires to send a pulse. Through the wall, it was small, but he heard a click. The door's lock system made a noise. He stopped right away. It wasn't time yet. He began to count the guard's steps when they passed. Every 8 hours, they changed shifts. For 10 minutes, there was only one guard in his section. He also noted when Reeler was near. One night, Daniel whispered to the wires, Almost ready. The next day, he spoke to Reeler again. Do you ever wonder why they fear us? They don't fear you, Reeler said. Then why do they lock me away so deep? In the ship, why do they laugh so much? Reeler had no answer. Daniel leaned forward. They laugh because they are afraid to take us seriously. That night, Daniel made his move. He waited until the guard shift changed. He crossed 2 wires together. The lights blinked, and his door opened slightly. He waited. No alarm. He slipped out, holding the sharp metal piece like a blade. He moved quietly, barefoot, down the hall. The ship was silent. He found a service panel and opened it. Inside were more wires and a small control pad. Daniel smiled. He began to type. Slowly, carefully. He didn't have much time. He activated a loop in the camera system. It would show an empty cell for the next 30 minutes. He moved again, looking for a map. He needed to find the engine room or the communication center. Both would help. He found a storage room. Inside were old tools, uniforms, and a few emergency packs. He grabbed a light weapon and a small bag. He also found a datapad with maps. He studied it quickly. Engine room was 5 levels down. Communications was closer to halls over. He chose communications. Entered the room, dark and empty. Screens showed alien text. He connected the datapad and began searching for access. He wasn't trying to call humans. Not yet. He wanted to upload a message into the alien system. A warning. Something they couldn't delete easily. He recorded a short video. His face was bruised, but his eyes were sharp. This is Daniel Cole, soldier of Earth. You laughed when I was captured. You thought I was weak. But while you laughed, I learned. While you watched, I waited. And now, I'm inside your ship. I know your paths. I know your systems. And I'm not alone. He uploaded the video and attached it to a timed command. It would play across the fleet screens in 24 hours. He heard a noise outside. Someone was coming. He grabbed the weapon and hid behind the door. The door opened. It was Reeler. They stared at each other. Reeler whispered, What are you doing? You already know. Daniel said, Now you have to choose. Reeler looked torn. He stepped inside and closed the door. What do you want from me? I want to survive. And I want them to know who I am. Reeler nodded slowly. Then we must hurry. The general arrives soon. Together, they left the room. Daniel now had help. And the ship, once a prison, was becoming a path to something greater. The war was not over. It was just beginning. Daniel followed Reeler through the dark halls of the alien warship. His heart was beating fast, but his steps were quiet. The weapon in his hand was light but deadly. Reeler moved ahead, looking left and right, checking for guards. They reached a door. Reeler pressed a button and whispered, This is the prisoner bay. There are other humans here. Daniel nodded. How many? 4, maybe 5. I think one is injured. The door opened. The room inside was cold and dim. Metal cages lined the walls. Inside each one was a human. Daniel stepped forward. A woman looked up. Her face was thin, but her eyes were strong. Who are you? She asked. Daniel Cole. I was captured too. We're getting out. The woman stood. I'm Laura Green. I'm a medic. These 3 are from different ships. The one in the corner is Private Mills. He's hurt. Reeler unlocked the cages. One by one, the prisoners stepped out. Laura helped Mills to his feet. He limped but could walk. We don't have much time, Reeler said. Daniel looked at them. Do any of you know how to fight? I do, said a young man named Evan. I was trained for close combat. Good, Daniel said. He handed Evan a second weapon he had taken from the storage room earlier. They moved quickly through the halls, keeping to the shadows. Riller led them to a service tunnel. "This will take us near the engine room," he said. "But after that, I cannot help. If I go any further, they will know." Daniel looked at him. "You've already done more than enough. Thank you." Riller gave a small nod. "I hope your people remember you." He turned and disappeared down the tunnel. Daniel and the others moved forward. The tunnel was narrow and hot. Pipes hissed with steam. Every sound seemed louder. They reached a vent. Daniel opened it and peeked out. Below them was the engine control room. Only 2 guards were there. Daniel turned to Evan. "You take the one on the left, I'll take the right. Quiet and fast." They dropped from the vent. The guards turned, but it was too late. 2 silent shots and both aliens fell. The room was now theirs. Laura helped Private Mills sit against the wall. She checked his wound and gave him water. Daniel moved to the control panel. He placed the datapad on the table and started typing. "What are you doing?" Evan asked. "Setting a charge." "Setting a charge, not a bomb, just enough to shut this ship down. If we can't destroy it, we can at least stop it." He connected wires and placed a timer. 10 minutes, he said. "Let's move." They ran through the lower deck, heading for the hangar. Alarms started to ring. Red lights flashed. They found the bodies. Laura said, "Then we have to move faster." Daniel replied. They reached a blast door. Behind it was the hangar. Daniel used a stolen keycard Laura had given him. The door opened slowly. Inside were several alien ships, small and fast. Perfect for escape. "Pick one," Daniel shouted. "Get inside." They ran toward a dark gray shuttle. Evan and Daniel climbed into the pilot seats. Laura and the others strapped in. Daniel looked at the controls. Alien symbols blinked on the screen. "Can you fly this?" Laura asked. "I've flown worse," Daniel said with a grin. He pressed buttons, pulled levers, and the engine came to life. The shuttle shook, then lifted into the air. Just then, the hangar doors began to close. "No," Evan shouted. Daniel pushed the thrusters. To full power. The ship shot forward. The door was almost shut. Metal scraped against metal as they barely slipped through. They were out. Behind them, the warship flickered. Then, the engine room exploded. Lights across the ship went dark. "That should slow them down," Daniel said, but they weren't safe yet. 2 enemy fighters came after them. "Hold on," Daniel shouted. The shuttle flew through the stars. Daniel dodged lasers and missiles. Evan fired back from the rear cannon. "One down," Evan yelled. The second fighter fired a missile. It hit their left wing. The shuttle shook hard. "We're hit," Laura said. "Losing fuel." Daniel spotted a small moon nearby. "We'll land there. Brace for impact." The shuttle dropped fast. The ground came closer. Daniel fought to keep it steady. With a hard thud, they crashed onto the rocky surface. Smoke filled the cabin. But everyone was alive. Daniel opened the door. Cold wind hit his face. The sky above was dark and full of stars. "Everyone out," he said. "We need to move before they find us." They grabbed supplies and weapons. Laura helped Mills again. Daniel looked up at the stars. He had escaped. He had hurt them. He had shown them that humans were not weak. But this was not the end. This was just the middle of the fight. They would come again, and he would be ready. The cold wind on the rocky moon blew dust across the ground. Daniel stood with his back to the shuttle, watching the sky. The stars looked peaceful, but he knew the enemy was out there. But Tharzal would not forget what he had done. They would come looking soon. Behind him, Laura worked quickly to check their supplies. Evan was helping Private Mills lie down near a large rock. The young soldier was still hurt, but alive. "We need shelter," Laura said. "This cold will get worse." Daniel nodded. "We'll search for a cave or some cover. We also need to send a signal to our people." Evan pointed to the shuttle. "The comms are damaged. We might be able to fix them, but not fast." Daniel looked around. "Then we find cover first. Stay close." The group moved carefully across the moon's surface. The rocks were sharp and the ground uneven. After a long walk, they found a small cave hidden by a hill. It was dry inside and deep enough to hide them. They brought Mills in first, then the rest of the supplies. Daniel placed small motion sensors near the entrance, using leftover parts from the shuttle. That night, they sat around a small heater. The light was dim, and the air smelled of metal and dust. "You think they'll come soon?" Evan asked. Daniel looked at the cave entrance. "Yes, they'll send scouts first, then more. We have to be ready." Laura handed out food packs. "We need a plan. We can't run again. We're low on fuel and ammo." Daniel agreed. "This time, we fight here. This is our stand." The next morning, Daniel and Evan went back to the shuttle. They collected tools, wires, and anything they could use as weapons. Laura stayed with Mills, helping him regain strength. Daniel worked on the broken comms. The signal was weak, but he managed to send a short message into deep space. "This is Daniel Cole. Crashed on Moon X73. Need help. Coordinates attached. Enemy forces nearby." He had no way of knowing if anyone received it, but it was all he could do. Later, Daniel and Evan set traps around the cave. They buried wires, set up alarms, and placed sharp metal pieces under rocks. Anything to slow the enemy down. 3 days passed. They took turns watching the skies. Then, on the fourth night, the sensors beeped. "They're here," Daniel said. They moved to their positions. Daniel and Evan hid behind rocks. Laura stayed in the cave with Mills, ready to defend him. The first Tharzal scout ship landed quietly. 4 alien soldiers stepped out. They wore black armor and carried large weapons. Daniel waited. When the first alien stepped into a trap, a sharp metal spike hit its leg. It screamed and fell. Evan fired first, hitting the second alien in the chest. Daniel shot the third. The fourth tried to run, but Laura shot from the cave and brought it down. The battle was short. They had won, but it was just the beginning. "They'll send more now," Evan said, breathing hard. Daniel nodded. "Then we keep fighting. We make every attack costly." That night, Daniel recorded another message on the shuttle. "You thought I was weak. You laughed, but I'm still alive. We're still fighting. If you come again, you'll lose more, and your people will see that humans don't give up." He sent the message into space, knowing it would be heard by both humans and Tharzal. Over the next 2 days, more enemy ships came. The group fought hard. They used traps, surprise attacks, and smart plans. The Tharzal lost soldiers with every fight. Daniel was hit in the shoulder during one battle, but he kept going. Laura patched him up quickly. On the 7th day, the sky lit up. A large ship appeared. It was a human rescue ship. The signal had been received. "They found us," Laura said with tears in her eyes. The rescue team landed and fought off the last group of Tharzal attackers. Daniel and his group were taken aboard. As they flew away from the moon, Daniel looked out the window. He saw the cave where they had fought, the shuttle they had used, and the empty battlefield. He had survived, and he had shown the enemy that humans were not weak. The fight was not over, but the Tharzal would never laugh at a human again. The human rescue ship flew through space, leaving the rocky moon behind. Daniel sat in the medbay with his arm bandaged. His face was tired, but his eyes stayed sharp. Laura sat nearby, helping Private Mills drink water. Evan stood by the window, watching stars pass by. A soldier walked into the room. He saluted Daniel. "Sir, Command wants to speak with you. They received your messages. They want to know what happened." Daniel stood slowly and followed the soldier to the command room. A large screen showed the faces of top officers. One of them, Admiral Carter, leaned forward. "Sergeant Cole, we received your signal and your broadcast. You caused major disruption in the Tharzal fleet. They're pulling ships back. Some of their outer posts are in panic. What did you do?" Daniel explained everything. How he was captured. How the aliens laughed and mocked him. How he stayed silent and planned. How he escaped, rescued others, and damaged the enemy ship. He ended by saying, "They never thought a human could fight back from the inside. That was their mistake." The screen stayed silent for a moment. Then the Admiral nodded. "You've done more than most soldiers ever will. Your message reached across space. Even some neutral worlds are talking about it." Daniel asked, "What about the Tharzal? What will they do now? They've gone quiet. That scares us more than anything. But we're preparing, and your story has lit a fire in our people." The call ended. Daniel returned to the medbay. Laura looked at him. "What did they say?" "They said the enemy is nervous. They said people are listening." A few days later, the rescue ship arrived at a human base called Fort Elora. Soldiers greeted them with cheers. News of their survival and the message Daniel sent had already spread. Doctors treated Mills, who was getting stronger. Evan joined a new team of scouts. Laura was asked to help train medics. Daniel was given time to rest, but his mind was always thinking. One evening, he walked to the base's viewing deck. The stars looked peaceful again. But he knew the fight wasn't over. A young soldier walked up to him. "Are you Sergeant Daniel Cole?" Daniel turned. "Yes, I saw your message. My younger brother did too. He signed up because of you. Said he wants to be strong like the human in the alien ship." Daniel smiled, just a little. "Tell him to be smart too. Bravery means nothing without a plan." The soldier nodded and walked away. Later that week, Daniel was called to a meeting room. A group of officers sat around a table. "We want you to lead a new unit," one officer said. "A team trained for missions inside enemy ships. Covert, fast, and deadly. You've already proven it can be done." Daniel looked at them. He saw maps, files, and plans. He knew this was the next step. "I'll do it," he said, "but we don't laugh at the enemy. We study them, and we strike when they least expect it." He began training new soldiers. He taught them how to move quietly, how to study patterns, how to survive when surrounded. He told them his story not to brag, but to teach. Laura joined his team as the lead medic. Evan returned too, now stronger and more focused. Their first mission came quickly. A Tharzal outpost had gone silent. The team moved in quietly. They found the aliens had left in a rush. On the wall, someone had painted Daniel's face from his broadcast with the words, "Fear, the quiet ones." Daniel stood there, looking at the wall. He felt strange. They remember you, Laura said. Good, Daniel replied. Let them. As the team left the outpost, Daniel looked back one last time. He knew the war was far from over. But he also knew something had changed. The Tharzal no longer laughed. They watched the dark corners now. They looked behind them more often. They feared the silence, and somewhere, across the stars, other humans like Daniel were getting ready, quietly, carefully. The war would go on, but the humans would no longer fight just to survive. Now, they fought to win.